If your audio is not fine, and or your connection is bad, don't worry. Like I mentioned earlier, we will be recording this like 30-minute chat, and we will probably be putting it up somewhere, right? We can view it. So don't feel like you're gonna be missing out on stuff. Yeah. With that said, just a reminder: if you are uncomfortable with having your background, your face, or name, even your name shared, just let me know. You can turn off your video, leave your audio on, right? And just drop me a message so that if I do post anything, I'll just blank out your name or something like that. Yeah. You know that some of us are really shy. Some of us don't even like to share our workout videos online. So coaches can't coach. That's a different thing. All right. Okay. So we're not gonna wait. Okay, just like normal classes. So welcome everybody to our first ever chat. I don't like to call it Q&A. I like to call it chat because we like to keep things informal here. So today the topic is going to be all about mobility. Yeah. So just a couple of ground rules because there are quite a number of us. We do have some questions that me and Zhiqian are going to be just talking and presenting back and forth. If you do have a burning question that is relevant to the topic or question that we are discussing, feel free to ask the question. Then you can wave in the screen. You can use the raise hand function, right? Or you just unmute yourself and just ask whenever you can. However, if possible, I'd like you to keep those questions towards the end. Also, if possible, like if you're not too sure or it's not a related question, feel free to just go on to the question. We will have a short Q&A after we talk, right? So that we can maybe experiment and find out more stuff about everybody. Cool? Yeah, thanks for the thumbs up. Yeah, so we started this mainly because throughout the last month of having virtual classes, we had like a ton of questions about classes, right? And we thought it'd be great to just have this session to address this thing so that everybody gets a clear idea on what mobility is and what we do. Yeah. So one question that comes up very frequently is, what is mobility and what is flexibility? What's the difference between these two? So just want to know that the terms mobility and flexibility are just definitions, right? They're man-made. Just that for the context of our discussion and the way we present our classes, we just define flexibility as your maximum range, right? So whatever range you can go into, you passively, that is what we call flexibility. What we term mobility is just a combination of flexibility plus control, right? So if you're able to control your joint at end range, right, with strength, we call that mobility. So in our classes, we emphasize greatly on mobility instead of just flexibility because if you only have the range but you don't have the control, right, in this our opinion, that sometimes can be detrimental. Yeah. So as to the other question, following question of whether flexibility is important, right, or should you only be focusing on mobility? Know that actually it's not different. Flexibility is actually like a subset of mobility. You can't have mobility without flexibility, right? You can't be strong in all ranges if you don't have the range. So rather than thinking of it as different, think of it as it's actually very interrelated. Yeah. So that is like the first question that I just want to get out of my system because I've been asked that a lot. Yeah, Zhiqian, anything to add on to this?
No, you want to?
Yeah. No thoughts on this? Yeah. Yeah, so that's how we're going to open it. So this next question we have from a lot of people, especially after class, is, like today's class, we're doing some moves that involve like a front split, middle split kind of stuff. Why can't I do that in class? Right? Or why can't I do this? Or why can someone else do this movement but I can't? Right? So we're going to lump all those sort of questions into the next segment. And I'm going to pass it over to Zhiqian to talk a bit more about this.
So regarding the question of like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? I guess I will just preface it first and say that, of course, all these are just based off my experience with dealing with stuff. All these are based off my experience dealing with other people, and of course, my knowledge and understanding of this bit of stuff. So I guess I'll be addressing it in two different parts. Like, first of which is the prerequisites that we would always talk about during class. So I would roughly split into three components, I guess. So prerequisites for your flexibility, for your mobility, prerequisites for your strength and endurance, and like prerequisites for like, I would just generally put it as like body awareness. Yeah. So in the first place, joint mobility. If you don't have access to certain stuff, you don't have access to certain stuff. No matter how much you try, you won't get there. It's just like you can't afford something because you don't have the resource to. It is as simple as that. You need to earn your way through it. So if you can't bring your legs or your arms to a certain position, you need to start developing that range first. So this is what we talk about or point out when it comes to like joint mobility prerequisites, flexibility prerequisites. You need to have access into those ranges first. You need to have some level of control over those ranges first. If you don't, you don't. You won't be able to do whatever skill or whatever position unless you gain control and access over those ranges. Now, once you have access over those ranges, that is just, of course, part one of it. Like, you do also need to have some level of control as well. Like, yes, you can lift your arms overhead, but can you like bear weight overhead? So now we start to talk about like implementing force over that range of motion. Like, a lot of people like to make like comparisons like, oh, I can like lift a 20 kilo barbell overhead, or I can do like handstand with my feet up on the box. How come I can't do handstand with like my feet up against the wall? Like, you need to understand that there's also different varying intensities, and you again need to build your way up. Like, throughout this call, you'll keep like hearing us saying that you need to build your way up. You need to earn your way up there because it is a fact. And I will touch on that a bit later on. And so, yes, mobility is one, strength is two. And of course, there's this one final bit of thing that I do think people tend to forget, and that's like body awareness. I'm just generally lumping them together, but body awareness in terms of like how well you can like manipulate your body, your prior experience with dealing with like similar activities, and also like your ability to just pick up and like get a hang of new movements. Because there are some people that just pick things up quickly, more quick than the others. Like, first time seeing this, oh, do you mean this? Like, few tries later they can get it. Or others are just slow in picking up. Like, it definitely takes time. You don't rush it. Like, we would probably need to have like a long conversation with you on what your training background is, just to know that, like, maybe you have done some gymnastics last time, which is why you can like just flop into the split out of nowhere. Or you have been doing nothing your whole life, and suddenly at the age of 50 you decide to want to get into a front split. Like, all these things take time to deteriorate. All these things takes time to build back up. So prior experience as well, like how aware of you in dealing with all this stuff, and prior experience also matters with this. So like, we are just talking about prerequisite stuff briefly, just so that you can have some context on like why you can't get stuff. And basically it's just because you're not there yet, and you need to earn your way there. You don't just magically get one quick fix into stuff. Like, it doesn't work that way. If it does, like, oh, this cue works for me, then suddenly I can get this. It's just because in the first place you already had it. You just never knew how to like apply whatever resources you have available in your body to get into whatever skill or position there is. Okay. I will just briefly touch on this before I pass it back to Alvin. The thing is that something that I noticed with the people that I work with, they start from top down instead of bottom up. Like, everyone nowadays focuses on like, oh, I want to get so and so skill because I saw this on YouTube or on Instagram. And I will just link it back to some like long time ago when we started calisthenics stuff, everything is built from bottom up without knowing like what skill leads to what. The thing is, people like to reverse engineer things very poorly. Oh, is it because I'm not engaging so and so muscles? That's why I can't do like a scorpion head to toe handstand, or like, you know, I can't grab my foot by bending backwards. Like, you need to again earn your way to that. Like, people are expecting one magic fix or one magic cue into that. Like, you can reverse engineer it to a certain degree just to try to brainstorm and see where you are lacking. But you need to realistically expect that it takes time, and probably long time, to get somewhere. And your body takes time to adapt. If I were to just give rough numbers now, based of my understanding, muscles takes 2 to 3 months to adapt. Your tendons, ligaments, connective tissue, 7 to 8 months, and bones up to like 2 years. If knowing all this, your structure takes this bit of time to develop, to like adapt, to like shape into stuff, you cannot just expect yourself to get stuff overnight. I'm sorry to say that. Like, you would work from bottom up and again earn your way up there. You don't reverse engineer it and like complain over why you can't get stuff, you know. So yeah, I guess when it comes to like skill development, you know, there's also in the midst people asking like, you know, why you're feeling certain like why you're feeling certain things, whether that is okay or not. Yeah, let's pass it to Alvin to talk about this.
Yeah, so thanks, Sachin. So like I want to add one more thing when we talk about prerequisites. Like it's also important, even if you reverse engineer stuff, to understand what the requisites are. Like if your goal is, let's say, front split, you now have to recognize what entails a front split, right? One leg has to have really good flexion, one leg has to get really good hip extension. And if you ask yourself, if you have like crap hips with poor flexion and poor extension, you're gonna have a crappy front split. You know, it's simple. Like there are people who have never done a front split in their life, but who have trained to have good flexion and extension. They're gonna come up with like a decent front split, even if they don't train regularly, right? So even if you're working back down, that's something that you want to think about. So I think the next question is that we have in class, as you mentioned, when we do certain stuff, or when you're doing like a back bending session, you know, is it okay to feel certain things? Like maybe someone mentioned to me, oh, in the back bend class, I always feel more in my neck instead of my spine, you know, or I always, when I'm doing handstands, I feel more in my elbows instead of my shoulders, even though you guys say you got to push through your shoulders. So I just want to, you just want to understand that like no one knows your body better than yourself. Yeah, it's like not me, not Ziqian, right? Not your cat, not your dog. No one knows your body better than yourself. No one really knows how you're feeling. Right? And it's really important to understand that it is okay to feel whatever you are feeling. Right? We're all different. Right? Even though we all try to do the same pose or same shape or same size, we're all going to be feeling different stuff because we all have different experiences. All right? Like Tian mentioned, if you have a strong background and you've done like gymnastics for like, or gymnastic style training for a couple of years, versus someone who's coming for the first time, your sensation and your experience doing the same movement is going to be very different. Okay, so that's the first thing. So as to why, like, another thing is that even doing back bend, and for you, most of you, if you've been to classes before, you know that okay, back bend, you also feel more back, but you feel the neck. Is that a good or bad thing? Well, the answer is that it depends, right? So the go-to, I know this is not the answer that you may be looking for, right? There's no straightforward answer, but know that we have one very easy guide, which we say a lot in class, which is to guide your movement and sensation by pain, right? So when I say pain, we refer to like sharp stabbing, pain, like it feels like you're gonna die. So normally we like to use a pain scale. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if that movement causes you some sort of discomfort / pain, right, and it hits like a level 1 or 2, do you continue? Maybe, because it's not that bad. If it hits a level 4 or 5, right, do you continue? In my personal opinion, probably not, because it's now going towards, right, more than like 50%. If it shoots up straight away and hits a level 8 or 9, do you continue or stop? right? I think the answer is pretty clear. If you're in pain and you're suffering, and then you wait till after and you suffer throughout class, and then you ask us, Alvin, while doing the exercise, my right hand was a sharp pain. It was hurt. It hurt throughout. What should I do? I'm like, just stop. That's as simple as it gets. Especially in this time when you're all doing virtual training, right? You have to really take the autonomy and understand your own body better. Like, make the right decisions. Right? Don't put the responsibility on your coaches. Like, we are good, but you're not that good. Okay. If you're in pain, just stop. Yeah. So I think I kind of went off topic, but yeah. Sorry, as you know, I like to nag a lot. Right. So is it okay if you stop? Yes. Right. If it's painful, do you stop? Yes. Right. So now the next question is, if you feel certain stuff, is it okay? Is it not okay? And what should you do? Right. So what's the next step? How are we gonna do? Like, how should you understand if it's okay to continue, or are there other steps you can take to get the movement better? Is something that I'm going to pass back to Chen to talk about.
I guess before we dive right into that, it might also be a good thing to point out, like, pain is just part of the sensations that your body gives off in reaction to, like, how you're interacting with your body, with the environment, or the position to put yourself through. Yeah. So let's just treat it as an alarm system. And you would probably also want to know that there's this spectrum of pain that would generally be good to know in terms of, like, helping with decision making. So there's this 4 quadrant basically, and it's very clear on first 2 ends that there's pain and there's actual, like, tissue damage stuff going on. And on the other hand, like, there's no pain, there's no tissue damage. Like, those 2 are very clear for sure. But there's also these other 2 areas that's, like, a bit blurred, which is you feel pain, but there's no tissue damage, or, like, there's tissue damage, but there's no pain. Like, all these generally are good to know, because when you start feeling stuff, you can make better decisions. All right. So let's just make rough examples before we move on. Like, pain but no tissue damage. It's as simple as you step on a Lego block. Like, it hurts as hell. Like, it's just weird protruding stuff that you're stepping on, and your feet is very sensitive, and you start feeling like stupid amount of pains over it. But there's no, when you lift your foot up, it's just an imprint of the Lego block. Like, there's no actual tissue damage going on. It's just your body giving off feedback over that object that you're stepping over. Or on the other hand, like pain. Let me think. Tissue damage but no pain. Like, I think I might go a bit off tangent here, but generally, like, the body degenerates. Let's just put it this way: the body degenerates, and research has shown that if you, like, pick a room of 10 people and you, like, do a screen of, like, their lower back, generally you'll catch people with, like, some form of, like, these issues. But the thing is that unless there's certain triggers to it, your body degenerates, and it degenerates at a very natural process. And unless there's a trigger to it, you won't feel, like, stuff going on around it. Yeah. So back to my point on, like, individualized assessments, knowing all these, when you feel sensations during class, don't freak out immediately. Alvin did mention the scale of 1 to 10, and I think generally that's a good, like, rough gauge that you have to work with. If it's something new to you and you feel like, wow, shit, that's damn uncomfortable, something starts to feel like pins and needles, then, if it crosses past, like, a 5, 6, 7, 8, back off immediately. Like, through our eyes, when we see you over the camera, like, over class, when we see you in person, it looks ideal to us. Like, that's the position we want you to be in. But it might feel otherwise for you, and we might not be able to catch it unless you tell us. So that's where the coaching process comes in. Our ideal may not be your ideal. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to point out too, because don't try to force your way through. Sometimes we may not be always right, and we need to have you communicate with us as well, so that we know how to best work with you. Like, I will also put this on a side note and say that with every position that we put you through, there's also certain levels of prerequisites, like I keep throwing this term prerequisite, but just because if, let's say, in a mobility class, I get you in the knees, chest, chin position, and I ask you to walk your knees in as close as possible, like, if you don't bend well in a certain area, another part will have to bend more. And because the other part have to bend more, and it is way beyond what you're normally used to, it is a new sensation, your body will probably freak out a little more. And so the stuff going on around there might be a bit more alarming than usual. Does that mean it's a bad thing? Maybe, maybe not. Again, back to prior experiences. If you have injuries in the area before and you get into that and you stay in there long enough, probably you'll keep triggering and you will start triggering some kind of like old chronic pain that you had before that you had to deal with. If, on the other hand, it's just like, again, it's as simple as you have never felt it before. The moment you come out of it, feels okay. Then, maybe it's just your body freaking out a little too much. Work with that pain scale. I think that's the simplest and most general advice we can give you without diving deep into the nitty-gritty bit of stuff. So repeat again, 3 and below, we sort of think is okay. When it hits a 4, you might want to think twice a bit. 5 and above, back off immediately. Unless you have some level of experience in dealing with it, you might be okay to go on. But again, the fact that it crosses past a 5, even to an 8, it might be possible that you are normalizing certain sensations when it's not okay. So again, this is where it's important to like communicate with us. Like, we have platforms available for you to communicate with us, both privately and in person, in the group chat, whatever. Like, communicate with us so that we can best work with you. Sometimes you are stuck with certain things as well because you are normalizing certain things that shouldn't be normalized. Yeah. Yeah, I guess to start to move to the final bit of stuff, of course, with mobility, there are always different modalities. And I will just put a general statement across and say that different things work for different people based on the current state of your body. It has different needs for different type of stimulus in order to promote growth and adaptation. Yeah. Just to generally list out a few modalities, like, passive long stretches, your active stretch, or your end range lift, PNF, partner stretching, or like ballistic stretching, loaded stretching with weights. All these are normally brought up in very narrow contexts, and so people compare them poorly. I personally do think that people compare them poorly. But if I had to give a simple answer, let's just take it this way. I've listed them in terms of like levels of difficulty, levels of intensity. Passive is probably like as if you are lifting 2.5 kilo weight plate, all right? And you can hold it there for long amount of time. Like, long passive stretches simply means lower grade of stuff. And you are holding it at an intensity that you can last for long periods of time. Something that's somewhere in the middle with like maybe your active stretches or your partner assisted stretches, PNF, active stuff. Let's just roughly grade it at like a 10 kilo weight. Yeah. So the weight has increased. All right. There's more stuff, more inputs going through the lengthening end of the body. Yeah. So that means when it gets to this point, some of you may be able to handle it, some of you may not. As much as we tell you to relax into the position sometimes, if your body can't manage that load of like 10 kilo worth of like load, means you can't. I know you know that we tell you to relax, but if your body has no strength to hold and tolerate in that position, cannot means cannot. You either back off or you just stay there, because the term relaxing might not make that much sense for you yet. And of course, in a group class setting, you manage what you can, and probably you look for alternatives or like adjustments or seek advice for it after class kind of thing. Yeah. And probably at the higher end of the spectrum, I do grade this a little higher just because of the like bigger possibilities of ramping it pretty aggressively, like all your ballistic stretching, your loaded stretching. You could be holding like a 40 kilo loaded barbell and like trying to do like forward fold stuff. Like that load is quite aggressive. Yeah. And again, if you have caught on to me with the first two examples, more load means more like intense level of stresses being placed on the tissues. If your tissues can manage to tolerate it at that range, you will get benefits from it. If it cannot, and your body, you are still trying very hard to hold on to it, and probably despite us telling you otherwise, you either just get stronger in a compromised position or you get hurt because you're pushing your body way past a point that it goes past that compensation wall and past to a injury kind of thing, because your body has tried hard to like tolerate whatever you can put it, and it has certain threshold. If you refuse to listen, you refuse to back off, your body will be intelligent enough to send signals if you're approaching this carefully, like certain stuff is getting to spasm, certain stuff is starting to hurt a little more than usual, and you ignore that, then it's on you for like getting injured over stuff. Yeah, like it goes back to the pain scale of 1 to 10. 3 and below, okay. 4, you think twice a little bit. 5 and above, you might want to back off unless you know very well what you're doing. And I would put that as a very big very well. Like sometimes we think we know, but we don't. And a lot of times it's through prior experience that tells us otherwise. Like we as coaches who have gone through this same thing as well, that we know lah, like we can tolerate this load until it goes past a certain point that we think we know is when we don't. It's like, oh shit, I got injured. Like I thought I can hold 5 more seconds because the timer is running up soon and I'm shaking very badly and I know what I'm dealing with, or so I know. And that's where you get injured. Like nobody absolutely knows unless you have gone through certain levels of experience, or you are taking certain advices more cautiously and like taken it to heart and trying to like follow along with it, practice it more like strictly. All right. Otherwise, I think as a physical practice, know that it is okay to make mistakes, but don't get stuck in it. You know, you would acknowledge that you fucked up. You know, like, oh shit, I kept bouncing. My coach tells me otherwise, and I don't listen. I kept bouncing. Then shit, injured. There are always ways to build back around it. Like you don't get permanently crippled from pulling your hamstring slightly. You just need to know that if you get stuck somewhere, realistically, you need to work from it several levels back down. It is a fact that you need to acknowledge. Yeah. If you persistently try to push at the same level that got you injured and you think that muscling your way through it is going to work, I would tell you that it's not for the most part. All right. Unless there are certain things that certain outliers that I'll probably not get into for now. Otherwise, generally, if shit hits the fan, bring it several levels back down. You need to like acknowledge it. You need to like swallow it and suck it up and like work your way from like several levels down again and back up. Yeah. But of course, knowing that is one thing, like acknowledging that is one thing, like how you would do it is another. And I think this is where we will step in as coaches. Of course, we won't claim that we know everything. And again, it is a two-way thing for you to tell us what you feel, communicate with us your experiences and sensations for us to best work with you. Like we might probably have certain general protocols that like, oh, I have had wrist issues before. Here's my 10 minutes wrist protocol that will work for you, for sure. But we might be saying for sure at an 80% success rate, and you might fall into the 20% that don't work at all. Like, again, that's where we need you to communicate with us. Like, we don't claim that we know everything. And so talk to us. If certain things just doesn't change after certain periods of time, let us know so that we can work along with you. Yeah, this is where we come in as coaches to help guide you through the process. And of course, this is where you also bear some responsibility, of course, either to get medical professional help, to get more information of your on your condition, or to just do some level of research. But again, don't take it as complete truth. You don't go into WebMD and check on your neck cramps and get scared off thinking that it's neck tumor kind of thing. Like make some level of research and communicate with your coaches, communicate with medical professionals from there. Like, it needs to be like a whole loop of like complete communication to know how to properly like rehab things back up, of course, if shit hits the fan. Yeah. Yes, Alvin, you want to say anything?
Yeah. So yeah. First of all, sorry. We kind of overran. We like to talk a lot. So as mentioned earlier, if you need to go, please go. Thank you for joining us. If you can, you just stay. We're gonna go into our Q&A pretty soon, right? Okay. So before we go, like, we're gonna open the floor and open the floor. So formal. We're gonna just gonna ask questions in a bit, but I do have one question that I'd like to answer first. So the question is that with all the different modalities, like Ziqian mentioned, your passive stretches, your pills and rails, your PNF, ballistic, whichever. Like, what is the most like effective or like the most time efficient, right, modality out there? So it is, in my opinion, and also the opinion of a lot of at least in the FRC community, that it is a loaded question. Like, we'll never be able to tell you which is the best method, like, for everybody, because there simply isn't. Well, as you just mentioned, depends on your experience, depends a lot on what you're used to. So you think of stretching or mobility in terms like a skill or strength acquisition, right? Stretching is a skill. There are certain stretches that you can always do a bit more, be more efficient and be a bit more precise about. And it's not something where everybody gets straight away, you know. So as to how long, like the question we get a lot, how long before do I have to train before I get my front split? Or how, on average, how long do you think people have to work before it gets a front split? That's like a hard question to answer, because it depends. Like, first of all, where are you right now with your splits? Second of all, what's your experience like training in front splits? Third of all, how are you physically? These three components, like, really makes a difference as to how long you take. As to also another question that I'm assuming right now that this question is asked because you want to find out like what's the best for yourself. And so my answer is this: I have no clue, right? The only way you're going to find out is if you try. It's going to be a whole sequence of, I think this might work. I test it out to see if it works. It kind of gives me a bit of improvement. Okay, let's stick with this. And you repeat and you repeat and repeat till it doesn't work as well as anymore. And you think, okay, I'm not improving anymore. What do I need? Do I need more load? Right? Maybe I want to try a different way of stretching. Maybe I need to try a different stimulus, or maybe I just need to try to do it better, right? So it's a feedback loop that goes over and over and over again. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's my take on it. Yeah. So right now, like, what's gonna happen? Okay, we finally reached a point I think most of you would like to partake in. We're gonna go into like our Q&A or chat session. So if anybody right now has any question, like, not just related to what we talk about, but if you're dying to ask about mobility, yes, please ask them now. So let's do it this way. I know there are a number of us here. If you have a question, just unmute yourself and just ask. Okay, so anyone has questions?
Hi, this is Lai Hun. I'd like to
Hi,
ask Qian about the body awareness. Can he elaborate a bit more on this part? Because like he said earlier on, this is something that I think most of us not so aware most of the time.
If I had to pluck examples off the top of my head now, body awareness can mean like, oh, how do I move between anterior and posterior tilt? Then on few levels after that, can I move between anterior and posterior tilt, like isolated anterior and posterior tilt in a hanging position, in an inverted position, in a plank position, in a lying down position? You need to know that different base positions produce like different ways of you interacting with gravity, produce different like ways of you interacting with your environment, and so like different ways of attempting to do certain stuff. Like other things to consider is that you might be being locked out of certain joint leverages that you might be compensating off to try to make that pelvic tilt movement, that when you get flipped into another orientation, you have trouble with it. So I'm just going a little bit more zoomed in on like that aspect of body awareness, which is like isolated joint movement. Yeah. And on the other hand, another one that I commonly see is like coordination. I think coordination is something that people might not address it as much as people need to, like something that's more close to me is like your handstand, your kick up to handstand. Like some of you can like kick up with your left leg in front, but you simply cannot do shit when your right leg is in front instead. Like your level of coordination is just like terrible. But I think I'll take this time to also remind that sometimes it is just a matter of practice. Like it is not because you are not firing or engaging certain muscles. It is not because certain things are not strong enough, or at least for the most part, it's not. Yeah, there might be certain outliers that we need to consider, like we might need to consider when it comes to certain things, but for the most part, it isn't. It's like whether you can hold your chopsticks with your left hand, it's not because you don't have the muscles for it. It's not because you are not activating the muscles on the base of the thumb in order to grab your chopsticks. It's just because you don't practice. Like it is a fact. Again, it is physical practice. There needs to be some level of practice put in. There needs to be some level of like intentional time clock in before certain things happen. Like that drives me back to the point where people like to approach it from top down instead of bottom up. Like right now, when it comes to all these more controlled situations, it might be quite blurred and people can't see. But when it comes to like acrobatic stuff, for example, I think it is very clear that it's either you can coordinate or you can't, kind of thing. I'm probably diving into stuff that I'm less familiar with, but I will just leave it as such. Like sometimes it just needs some level of like some time practiced in certain things. You cannot lump too many things together. I want to try to touch the wall and still be able to kick up with so and so legs. Sometimes it's just a matter of knowing that you need to separate right leg from the left and be able to generate power while separating right leg from the left, and so on and so forth. And that's the coordination bit. Yeah. Let's see. Did I miss anything out? I guess if I had to put one last thing out, I guess it's just diving into spaces that are unfamiliar for you. Like your body probably has good sensors towards the front, maybe less sideways, maybe it's a complete darkness like behind kind of thing. I'm just stating that very generally. That's why when you try to cartwheel out of handstand, like the moment you hit somewhere behind, suddenly your heart rate jumps up by 2 times and you suddenly break out into cold sweat. Like you just cannot manage. But that's just because you don't have any sense of orientation or whatever familiarity on like unfamiliar spaces around you. Yeah. And so in relation to that, like how you're manipulating your joints in those spaces, like maybe if your leg is in front of you, you can physically or like visually see your legs. And if we tell you keep your legs straight while you are pulsing, yes, you can keep your legs straight while you're pulsing. Like you can physically stare at it very intensely and go slower and you're pulsing. But the moment you lie face down the other way, then you're doing leg kicks or leg pulses the other way. and we keep nagging at you, straighten your leg, straighten your leg, straighten your leg, and you cannot, like retarded like that. You just keep kicking, and the knees keeps bending, like it's like a knee-jerk reaction. But it is probably understandable that you can't help it. Like you'll be telling, oh, I'm trying. Yeah, you are trying. Good. Then you slow it down. If you can't straighten and kick, then you focus on straightening first, or you focus on slowing down and trying to move or keeping it straight. Like there are these other things to consider. Again, like I will just sum it up to this one main point where I think people are rushing, you know, like they are trying to jumble too many objectives into one goal, one after the other. And what comes out of it is just a mess. You'll be spending at the most ideal scenario just several minutes into it before someone catches you and tell you that, hey, can you stop and break it down, and forces you to do it. Or on the worst case scenario, you keep getting away with these kind of poor practices because no one points out to you, or because you're stubborn to change. So like, yeah, I trying what? I just not gifted for this lah. I just not made for this lah. I trying already, cannot lah. But if I put you at several levels down, and clearly you seem to be struggling, and clearly after a few weeks you seem to be changing, then definitely it's on you. Like, I think we should not try to put certain hard restrictions on ourselves. Of course, there are certain things to consider, like maybe structurally you're just designed that way, that you can't achieve certain things. Like that's a fair point to make, of course. But if you haven't even tried, if I put you several levels down and I still see possibilities of developing, then I'll say that it's you. You are the one that's being stubborn and refusing to change, you know, or probably it's us that we are not giving you the correct progression. It's either way. So of course, it takes willingness on your end to talk to us and to listen. And of course, on our end to communicate with you, to know that if it doesn't work, we change. And it comes back to another same point, like it needs to be a two-way thing. Yeah. So like it needs to have a complete communication loop for things to like work properly and well. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Although long.
Yes. That means I have to go back to nursery class.
But I think as silly as that sounds, it is as such, you know. Like if I were to do what you do for a living, like I don't know what each and every one of you do for a living. But right now I teach and do, like I teach handstands for a living. If I ask you to teach the same way I do, you can't. Like if I'm asked to do whatever you do for a job and I'm expected to do what you do at your level of efficiency, like it doesn't make sense. Like we need to start from like, if you study physics and you teach physics, I cannot expect to break down formulas the same way you do. Like I need to go back to ground zero and learn how to add and subtract first. Like that's the level of expectations. I think people are not placing their own like this bit of expectations and copy pasting it over to your practice. Like everything has parallels, you know. Like don't just expect things to be quick. I think one of the faults in the industry is that people are selling things to be quick, and it gives people this idea that everything has to be quick. But there's always other things that's to consider. Like if I were to talk about this, it will go on for another hour, but you cannot expect yourself to jump the gun. Maybe you might start at a certain hit, like point far down that you might pick things up quicker, but you wouldn't rub it in someone's faces and say like, hey, I get this in 2 months, how come you cannot? But maybe that person hasn't been practicing their whole life. Their whole life has just been like sitting in a classroom and study, sitting in an office and work, then sitting at their home and reading newspaper. Then suddenly, hey, I want to learn handstand. You cannot expect them to just kick up the same way you do. Like it's unrealistic. For their whole life, they have been sitting. They have not been kicking up. Maybe for you, you have been doing gymnastics, for example. It's unrealistic. Like you need to match all this up as well, you know.
Yeah, I just want to add in one thing to that question. I think like if everyone here actually looks at like how the coaches train, I think you'd be surprised at how basic it is. Like a lot of times when we train, it's nothing fancy. It's basics, 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 basics. You know, it's like not like Zhijian doesn't spend all his time going to deep back bends. I mean, if you see the amount of time that he spends on the prep work, right? On like base level strength, it's a lot. You know, that's not an add-on that I think a lot, like you say, you always work top down. We spend so much time trying to achieve that end goal, end pose, you know. If we sort of neglect that, it's the bottom, is that base that's going to give you that ability and capability to get that end, you know, at the end position, goal, pose, or whatever it is that you're looking for. Yeah. Yeah, so that's just my 2 cents. Okay, yes, that was a really long answer. Right? Anyone else has any other questions? Please don't be shy. Yeah, it's kind of overrun, but we will be around. So if you'd like to stay and chat, yes, please. We are always happy to answer questions. As you can tell by now, we love to talk. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes? No?
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hello. Hi Ed. Hi everyone.
Hi,
So
ZH.
I have a question here. So how does one balance between strength and mobility training?
Okay. Do you mind if I take this one, Zhiqian?
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, that's actually a great question. That's another question that we get a lot as well. Like now that we talk about mobility, how do we balance between mobility and strength? Right? It's not like it's a tough question. And I'm gonna give you the same answer that I've given most of the questions. I have no idea. Why? Because balance to you is very different from balance to me. So what I mean by that is that you have to assess what's important to you, right? If right now, if you say, I'm making assumptions that you are very strength based, you're doing a lot of going to the gym often, you're doing a lot of strength workouts, doing your squats, your bench press. Now, how does mobility come in? It comes back to the question of what do you need? What do you need to achieve your goals, right? If you're doing all those movements or you're going about your life, you're perfectly fine. You don't experience pain, nothing restricts you. Would I then recommend you to spend a lot of time on mobility to get the splits because splits are cool? No, right? Doesn't make sense, right? You don't need it. But on the other hand, if let's say you love to back squat or you love to do squats and you are in pain or you can't squat the way that you want to, right? Then dedicate some time to mobility. Yeah, of course, right? If it's hindering you, if you're not able to do something, then it kind of makes sense that you will need or you should prioritize that mobility training. Okay, so understand that. Adding on to that, like why? That's the why, the idea behind it. So how do we do it, right? You have it's going to be a process of trial and error. So I said that mobility training is strength training, right? If you do hard mobility work, okay, it takes a toll on your body. Mobility training is not just like taking a stick and waving around, rolling down the floor, flailing your arms for like 5 minutes a day. You know, like that stuff, I'm sorry, not gonna help. You just get better at flailing around. Yeah. If you want to get like improvements in mobility, you have to put in the work, right? And that work is hard. And hard work will create a toll on your body. It will take energy out. So now how much you add on, how much you take out, it depends on what your body can handle. Some people have just developed like better capacity to take on more load so that they can just do more overall, right? So what I use as a gauge for myself is how well I recover. If I add on certain stuff and I don't recover as well, it's a clear sign to me that maybe it's too much. You know? Or if I'm recovering, great. Maybe it's a sign that I can now try to add in more stuff. Okay, so like I know this may not be the answer that you're looking for, but it is the truth. It all comes down to experimentation. It all comes down to monitoring your recovery. Okay, so yeah, that's about it from me. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Alvin. I think that's good information. Thanks for sharing.
All right, thanks, ZH. Anyone else? Any other questions? All good. Jen, you good? Yeah. Okay. Okay, last call.
Way in here.
Yeah.
So, hi everyone, I'm Raphael. So just to touch on like awareness and coordination. I think that is one of the elephants in the room. Yeah, I think that's one of the elephants in the room. I think awareness and coordination is something that is very difficult to teach, and is rightly so, because like what Alvin has mentioned, and probably Jason has touched on, that you are essentially the owner of your body and you have to build that understanding. So essentially the best that we can do is to get you to learn it on your own. Yeah. And when we keep saying like communicate, it's not just like passing the buck to you or passing the blame to you. It's more of, we want you to be able to build that sensitivity. So when we talk about pain, it's like a 5 to you may not be a 5 to someone else, right? And you have to understand also, pain is not effort. Doesn't mean like I go balls to walls, 10 effort punch into the wall, my face will feel a 10 upon 10 scale of pain. So it has to be very different. Like when we cue you in class, we are not trying to get you to, let's say we put you into a certain shape, we demonstrate a certain shape. You are not trying to simulate or replicate that shape. What we're trying to get you to do is to capture that sensation. Are you feeling that shoulder movement that we're trying to get you to do? Are you feeling that hamstring lengthening? That is the whole point of getting into the shape. The shape is simply a proxy to that sensation you want to feel. Yeah, and if that sensation, if you cannot communicate or you cannot understand it in your own head, it becomes very difficult for you to learn the movement or develop your body in that sense. Clear so far on the awareness portion? Cool. A bit on coordination. So yes, since they have asked me to quote some parkour examples. So I do teach parkour, and coordination is a huge part of parkour. So it's one of the things where if you come into a very structured training program, or you are used to being a calisthenics-based training program, or just a normal strength training program, it is very linear. Like you are facing like maybe your cardinal dimensions, up, down, left, right, and you're not exposed to moving around 360. So it's very difficult for you to capture each individual puzzle piece and put them together. So it would really make sense, like what Jason has said, slow down each movement. Don't try to layer everything at once. If you're building a kueh lapis or building a lasagna, you don't layer everything all at one time. You have to put part by part. Pastry, then the tomato, then the beef, then the pastry, then you keep repeating. You don't lump everything together and think you get one nice lasagna. It doesn't work that way. You work, if your pastry not nice, your beef not nice, your tomato not nice, the whole lasagna, I can forget about it. So make sure each piece, you work slowly first, do a nice pastry, okay, settle. Then the tomato comes on top. Again, tomato has to be nice and clean. If I'm doing a movement, let's say in parkour, if I need you to jump and then catch onto an object, if you cannot do both in isolation, that whole movement is going to result in injury. So the stakes are much higher there. So think of it this way. Maybe the stakes aren't as high here, but if you think about the stakes of you being not getting a skill for training 3-4 years, I think that's an even greater stake to play with. Yeah, you don't want to be just drilling, kicking up 4-5 years and not getting it because you don't want to. You're not how do I say, humble enough, not willing to sit back down, drill the fundamentals, and put them together only when they're ready. Cool. A lot of it comes down to muscle memory. You have to be able to do it in isolation, put them together. A plus B, get them good. A plus B plus C, get them good. A, B, C, D, kick up the handstand. Wonderful. Cool. Yeah, that's it from me.
So I'm just going to add a little bit about that, right? Is that I'd like you to just shift your mindset, just kind of think that everything is trainable. Even coordination is trainable, right? Even your sensation is trainable. Maybe now when you do a certain movement, you have no idea what's going on, right? Your body has no clue. That is trainable, right? Awareness is definitely trainable. So, and the hard part about awareness is that it's all internal. All we can prompt is, oh, what do you feel? What do you try? Just how do we get better at being aware? How do you get better at being coordination? It's just simply putting in the effort, right, to ask those questions. And when you do some movement, what do I feel? Back to the kicker example, because we teach a lot of handstands. Every time you kick up, what do you feel? What do your shoulders feel? What do your legs feel? What does your back feel? Maybe the first 2-3 weeks is going to be a question mark. What do I feel? I have no clue. But just by simply asking those questions, maybe by the second month, the third month, you're gonna feel something, right? It's the intent and the effort of trying that's gonna give you the results, right? Like the blind practice, oh, I just do it because the coach says so. I try, I fail, that mindlessness will not lead you anywhere. If you get it, you're just lucky. That's all. Yes, that's from me. Yeah, I know that we say a lot of stuff, like, we talk a lot, but please don't take what we say as the gospel truth, right? In fact, these are just thoughts. A lot of these we're saying right now, opinions. Everybody has an opinion, So like, take it in, digest it, and question us. Like, ask why. Why does Alvin say this? Why does Raphael say this? Why is Etienne always so naggy? Right? Ask those questions. Think about it. I think when you take the time to process, when you start to question stuff, when you go through that whole process, things become a bit clearer. And if things aren't clear, you get more questions. That's where we come in. Ask those questions. Naggy, right? Okay. So I know. Wow, it's 11:30. Okay. Anyone else? Anything else you add? I think, let's just do this. Like, we can hang and chill for about maybe 5-10 minutes. That gives us time for, at our rate, maybe 1 or 2 questions. So anyone else has questions? No. So Tian, anything else to add? You want to close? All good? All right. So if you're all good, thank you for joining us for our extended Q&A session today. I'd just like everyone to know that if we have provoked we have given you some material to think about, please go think about it. If you ever have any questions, you don't have to wait till the next time we announce a Q&A. Just let us know, right? Our own, we are always super active on Instagram, be it a Muslim Movement account or personal accounts. We'll always give you a reply. You can message us, comment on our posts, drop us an email, right? We'll always do our best to give you an answer. Right? May not be the answer you're looking for, but an answer nonetheless. Cool. So with that, thank you so much for joining me. Right? It's been a great 1 hour. It's been fun for me. Okay, and I hope you have a good day and a good rest of the month. Okay. See ya, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, bye.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
See you, Bojack. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Anyway, it's not something that